Okay, good morning. I'm running a little behind. I know that was kind of a weird start. If you're watching right from the beginning, you're like, wait a second, we went from starting soon to be right back, but we were never here in the first place. And my fault. I needed coffee, and it wasn't ready on time, so I just, instead of having the clock be at 00 and everybody's just waiting, I figured, well, I'll tell you that I'll be right back. So. Oh, coffee, good. I'm moving a little slow this morning, so I apologize for that. It was a late night last night. And can I hear myself? Let's see if I can hear myself. I can. So let me go ahead and get my stuff done while I'm talking to you. So last night, it wasn't anything spectacular or anything. I was up late playing online with my son, because we do that sometimes, because we play Call of Duty Warzone, and I enjoy it. It's my son doesn't live with me, and so we get on and we play with my friends and my son and stuff, so it's kind of fun, and spending time with him that way, because, you know, if you can't be together, you can be together virtually, fragging the enemy. So usually we get beat up pretty bad, but anyway, it's fun. I enjoy it, and that's kind of how that goes. Did I start my Facebook? I don't know if I started my Facebook. Let me see if Facebook got started. I don't know if I started that stream. I thought I did. Let me look and see. Let me go over here and see if the stream is on. I think it is. Yeah, it says it's on. So I gotta look at the thing and see why it's not streaming. But anywho, hang on. Let me click back there. Yeah, so I'm not quite set up this morning. I'm looking for my live. Usually it says, hey, he's live right now and go watch it, but it's not showing me that. So let me just refresh the screen here. Sometimes, like I said, using a different browser here, so sometimes maybe it won't show up. I don't know where my Facebook is here. Oh, there it is. There it is. It says it's live. Well, go play it. Play it big. I'm looking for my live. Usually it says, hey, he's live right now, and go watch it. There we go. All right. Yes. Thank you. But be quiet. We don't want to hear you. So anyway, so I was up late. So kind of a little rough start this morning. And then I only had one cup of coffee this morning, and I was getting ready to start the stream. And I was like, oh my God, I need more coffee. So more coffee was needed. It was a good weekend, but a little bit of an emotional weekend for me, just because of the anniversary of 9/11, and I have a lot of memories, most of them bad, from that day. I used to work for the FBI. I don't know if anybody of you know that. I worked downtown in Washington, D.C. on that day, and it is forever etched in my mind. I watched most of that stuff happen live at the time that it was happening, and then to be downtown and having so much erroneous information, and people were not knowing what was going on and saying more planes were coming in, and trying to get home that day, and it was an epic adventure in getting home My biggest concern that day was getting a hold of my wife and letting her know, because the phone lines, you couldn't get through. I had a cell phone. It was 2011, so cell phones were definitely very big, but I couldn't get a hold of her because all of the circuits were just jammed. So no cell phone service. I knew she'd be freaking out, and trying to get messages to her. Kill the spiders before they drop in my coffee. But anyway, so lots and lots, and then there was specials on this weekend and some other stuff, and I watched some, and then I spent time crying and whatever. But anyway, why is this? I just muted this. Where's my mute? Mute. There we go. So anyway, that yeah, that was a little sad. Time for reflecting and other such things. But I was also very busy this weekend. I was super busy. So I think if you were here Friday, you saw that I was talking about a project I was doing for my neighbor, and she had a stove cover that she had asked me to recover because she had changed her countertops and it no longer matched. And she asked if I could recover it, take the old one off, the old laminate off, and put new laminate on. She got new laminate that kind of matched her countertops, and I was, big bold woodworker, said absolutely, sure, I can do that, not a problem. I'd never done that before in my life. So did something new, did something interesting, very challenging, I will tell you. Like I said, I've never done that before. So for me, it was a couple of things going on there. One was kind of learning a new process and a new thing to do. The other was it was not the way I would normally do it, or anybody would normally do it, because I was retrofitting a piece of finished furniture, for lack of a better word. I couldn't apply the laminate material the way that you normally would, and this is the old stuff right here. So this is what I replaced. This is the old laminate, and these are the side pieces that went around. So basically this thing was just a very low, flat, but large box that sits on top of a stove and covers the burners when you're not using, because the stove is on an island in her kitchen. And so her husband had made this cover to cover the stove so that when you're not using the stove thing, you actually have more island counter space to work with, right? And so I want to say recently, a couple months ago or so, a few months ago, got her kitchen redone and got new countertops and everything. So it went from this dark brownish, I don't know what the heck kind of look this is, which was very close to what her countertops look like, to a much more of a light marbly kind of thing. And so she got material that looked more like this. And so the problem is, oh, coffee is so good. So the problem was that this box had been made, and her husband who made it, a friend of mine, Larry, he passed away a couple of years ago, and but this thing had a lot of not only functional value but sentimental value to her. So I didn't want to change it at all. I didn't want to mess it up. I wanted to keep it because he made it, and I wanted to keep it just like it was, so that she looks at it and she sees him. It's something that he made for her, and so I didn't want to change that at all. But I also needed to figure out how I was going to get. So the problem is Formica. This is Formica. I don't know. I don't think this camera is on. Let me turn this camera on right here. On. So Formica's it's a really weird substrate to work with. This is the Formica right here, and so the way the Formica works is it has this back substrate that looks like this, and it's all made the same, like this. And then they basically print whatever pattern you want on the top, or not what you want, but they make it in all sorts of patterns. It comes in wood grains, it comes in like this is more of like a marble pattern. You can get Formica in all kinds of patterns and styles and everything else, and it all pretty much looks the same on the back. It looks like this. This stuff is very brittle when it's not attached to something. So in the form that it's sitting in right here, this stuff, I mean, it can chip, it can snap, it can break. You can see it snapped right there. This is a spare offcut. So it can be very brittle, especially when you're cutting it. There's certain ways to cut it that are better than others. And it does not score with a razor and snap off because it can snap into the pattern that you want to keep. It's really hard to work with. And like I said, this is my first time really working with it. She had this huge sheet of it that she gave me. So I had lots to work with, and it wasn't really an issue having enough material. But my big problem was how I was going to size these pieces to get them onto the base or onto the box or whatever you want to call it. Because typically the way you do a piece of vinyl is, let's go back to camera 4. So what you would do is you would take if this is the piece that's getting the vinyl on there, you would take your vinyl and you would cut it oversized, right? So just ignore this part up here because it's not big enough. But anyway, you would cut it so that it overhangs on all sides of your project. So you'd have all this overhanging material like over here and here. Then what you do is you get yourself a pattern bit, not a pattern bit, but a, well, yeah, like a pattern bit. It's a laminate cutoff bit. I'm gonna come over here and grab mine. So you use a laminate cutoff bit, and it's basically a flush trim. So, well, here, I've got one right here. So right here, this is a flush trim bit, and it has a bearing up here, and then the blade right here. The blade cuts exactly the same diameter or same width as the bearing right here. So that you run this bearing along your surface edge, and it trims that laminate to the exact edge. So it gives you a nice flush, even trim. Well, the problem I had was this thing had, when it was constructed, he put all these trim pieces around. So I no longer had these flat edges to reference with that cutoff bit, with that laminate bit, to go along and trim it. And so I couldn't just oversize it and stuff. So I had to cut all the pieces to the exact dimensions that they needed to be. Which is also kind of a pain, because typically what you'll do, the reason you don't normally do it by cutting the exact size piece you need is that the glue up on this stuff, you use contact cement. Is usually the best way to do it. And contact cement, what you do is you coat the contact cement on one side of the material, and you coat it on the back of the material you're adhering, like the back of the Formica, and you wait for it to kind of dry to the point where it doesn't stick to your fingers. And that way they don't stick to anything but other contact cement. So you take this and this, they feel dry, but when you put them down, you put pressure, they're permanently, almost permanently bonded together. That's the way the contact cement works. So the contact cement adheres to other contact cement that's dry. And so when you get them down, they don't move. So you can't, like, it's not like using glue where you can set it down and then reposition and then clamp it down. It doesn't work that way. So what you do with contact cement is you basically will, if you're doing a large area, you take little sticks or dowels or whatever, and you lay it across the surface. Then you take your Formica sheet that has contact cement and you lay it on top of those dowels. So it's resting just above the work surface, but not touching. And then you kind of get it lined up so that you've got even overhang around all the surfaces. Then you start lowering or removing one dowel at a time and lowering it down to the surface and smoothing it out. Once you have it all down, you use something like this. This is called a J roller. And this is a hard rubber roller, and it's got a little bend in it here so that you can take this and just really put a lot of pressure on your contact glue surfaces there and really get the bond. The more pressure you put on there, the better the bond is. So you really want to get a good bond, especially around all the edges and everything else. So you work it with this roller right, like this. You just go back and forth and back and forth. And you work it down. Then you take your flush trim bit and you just trim around the edges. And you've got a beautifully fit piece of Formica laminate on top of your wood surface. Or whatever surface it is. It doesn't have to be wood. It can be particle board. It can be MDF. It can be whatever. But that's basically how Formica tops and such are applied. But when you have to have it sized exactly and you can't do the flush trim bit around the edge to get your overhang cleaned off, it's a lot harder because you have to do it to the point where you've got everything perfectly lined up. I use super thin shims to lay out across the surface area, and then I got it so the corners were perfectly matched up, and I had sized all this before I put any contact cement on there. Got it perfectly sized, took one edge shim off, and then slowly matched the corners down. And then I would start pulling them and pushing into the point where I got it laid out, and it fit really well. But that was super nerve-wracking because if you get it down there and all of a sudden it's not lining up on the far corner and you've already smushed down in the front, you're kind of hosed. There's not a lot you can do except try to peel it off and hope it doesn't snap and cut another piece. And so anyway, it was, and also all these side pieces. So I had these are the pieces that were removed, like I said. But what I did was I used these as templates to cut replacement pieces for it. So I would take this piece, the old piece, and I would double side tape it. I would get one edge lined up so it was straight. Then I would double side tape it to the replacement piece underneath it. And then I had a large piece of MDF that I clamped to my workspace, and that would act as a guide for the bearing. So I would just basically line up this edge and this edge, which was the perfect overhang. I would line that up with the edge of the MDF, and then I would come across with the flush trim and trim this off. So I got pieces that perfectly match this. This was actually, doing the sides was actually easier. The top was the part that just stressed me out to no end. But like I said, it was the first time I'd used Formica and did the whole contact cement thing and everything. I've seen other people do it. You can also do this for not just Formica, but for like veneer. This is the way veneers are done. And so it was really good for me to go through this process that I hadn't done before, because if I want to do something like a veneer where I've got plywood that I want to make more decorative and I can get really pretty wood veneers and put on top, well, this is the process, same process basically that you would use, and you use the same flush trim bits and everything else. So it was a really nice exercise for me to do something I hadn't done before and to kind of learn something that will someday down the road be put into play in some way, shape, or form in making a piece of furniture or something else. So that was fun and interesting. But like I said, I had the sweats trying to get that stuff done to the point where it was like looking really good. I actually have photos. Let me see if I can go over here, and I'm going to go over to the computer and switch my screen and see if I can share this with you. So I have a screen share set up here, but I don't know if it's going to, I probably have, I didn't set it up beforehand. So it's going to take just a moment here. So pardon the crazy look, because I need to find the screen I want to share. Is that it? I think this is it. Okay. I think that's it. And if I show this, hopefully you're seeing it. So let me go over here and see if what you're seeing is what you should be seeing. I think it is. Yes, I believe you're seeing the correct photo now. Let's see. Yep, so that's what you should be seeing. All right, so this is how it looked after I'd completed it. So you can see what I'm talking about. The handles were the original handles, so I had to also, that was the other thing, is I had to drill holes in the exact spots they needed to be in because there were already handle holes drilled into this thing. but you can see that's a very large surface. That takes up basically the entire area of my my table saw. That's where that's sitting, and that is lengthwise. That thing was about 28 inches wide or tall on the long side, and about 24 on the shortest side where the handles are. So 24 inches basically. Well, actually I could figure it out right here. I've got these pieces right here. How long was this? I never actually looked. So yeah, about 23.5 on the short side and about 32 on the long side. So 24 by 32 basic dimensions. But you can see that it's quite large. And I think there's a way I can click in here and move to the other photo. There we go. So let's see, is there one on this side? Hello. My mouse doesn't work so well from this far away. It's wireless, but let's see. So there's another piece. That's the top down. You can sort of see what it looks like. It has a nice kind of a marble look to it and everything, but you see the edge trim going all the way around, which made it really difficult because that's like a coping edge and kind of like a Roman ogee type piece of edging. And so I really couldn't use the flush trim bit or anything to get these edges right here trimmed off. So I had to kind of have it perfect. Perfect is a little bit of a misnomer. It wasn't perfect, but it was pretty close. And in this instance, I said, you know, pretty close is pretty close enough. And then, so just to kind of show you what it looks like in its environment, here it is on the island, sitting on the island on top of the place where it belongs. Is that the zoom? I think that's, oh, here you go. So here we go. I'll zoom in here so you can sort of see. So here's the, and you can see this is this is actually marble countertops here. And so this, it actually matches, there you go. It matches pretty well. Look at that. It's a pretty good match, right? A little more goldish veins inside the stone here, but overall the pattern looked really nice, and it fit in really well in the kitchen, and it wasn't this ugly brown speckled thing on top of this pretty marble, and that was kind of what she was after. So anyway, that's where that ended up. I just thought I would share that with you. We'll go back to our regular broadcast here. Yeah, so I just wanted to share that with you and show you what it looks like. So it turned out much better than I thought it would, and I was super pleased with that. But that's kind of one of the big things that I worked on this weekend, and I think it goes back to when we were talking about last week, is, you know what, if you're not really sure, maybe you should just say no. But sometimes, you know what, it's nice to push yourself and kind of branch into areas where it might actually be beneficial to you down the road. And so I have a new skill set. So using the contact cement and doing the laminate, Formica laminate tops, which will also work with veneers and stuff, I now would have a pretty high level of confidence doing that on another piece. And so I'm very happy about that. And I'm super happy that my neighbor that I love has her range top cover and is super happy about that. So win-win. That's not the only thing I did this weekend. Oh, coffee's so good. But I have all this laminate stuff just laying around because I just was kind of at a breakneck speed trying to get all this stuff done so I could get it to her this weekend. And I think I actually finished it up Saturday evening, and then she wasn't home, so I had to give it to her on Sunday. But I gave it to her yesterday, and she was thrilled. But during that whole period of time, I was also finishing the glue ups of the bottoms of all the bases I'm working on. And so I've got those. I've got 2 left in clamps right here. I'm going to move the computer over. So I've got 2 left in clamps. I clamped them up and let them dry for a period of time. So I didn't have to do a lot. It's just basically, like I said, getting them in clamps was the biggest thing. So I clamped about 2 of them at a time. So I did a couple on Saturday, and then I did a couple yesterday, and no, I did 2 on Saturday, and I did 4 of them yesterday. And so these are all done now, and we can move forward. But the process was basically just putting glue along the edge of the rabbit cut that we made in here, inserting the base bottoms that had already been cut and fit, and then clamping them down with clamping cawls. So I used long ones along the edge here, and then short ones on the sides. And that basically just when you put the clamp on, you're not just clamping in one spot, you're clamping along a surface, and that put more pressure on here to get a really good glue bond. So there's the bottom in there, and you can see this one particularly I like because I like the color of this plywood. This isn't the normal plywood I use, but I had some of this. It looked kind of cool, and it worked really well for this walnut. So that's kind of nice because it kind of has the same dark hue to it. It's not the same color, but when it's all said and done, that'll look really, really cool. So this is done. We still have, for all of these, we have these dividers that are going to have to go in here. I think I have to turn this around. So we have all these dividers that will need to be inserted before I can, and glued in. And before I can do that, I'm going to have to, there we go. We'll just keep that one in there. I'm going to have to get these cut down because they're too tall. I'll show you. So you can see, as I rest it on the bottom, you can see that this sits about 1/4 of an inch or maybe a little bit more above the edge. And so we will basically measure how far it is from the edge to the bottom, and then we will trim off just a little bit less than that off the top, and then I'll flush these out with a hand plane. We'll glue them in, flush them down with a hand plane. So that is something that's going to happen. I've got one more here in clamps, so let me get this one unclamped. This one is one of the ones with in hickory. We've got all these clamping cawls and clamps and other such things. All right. So, I mean, and like I said, I just kind of fit boards around the edge here until I have them that look the way they should look. Get these long ones off and these short ones, and then this is the divider. So, but yeah, another one that looks really nice, and this is very solid. I mean, I'm hitting that pretty hard. It's not going anywhere. It's solidly glued in. Like I said, these are not load bearing. Okay, so you're not going to load this. The machine that sits in here is not sitting on that bottom, and you're not going to load this with like 10 pounds of stuff and carry it around and hope that the bottom's not going to fall out. It's not. It's more, you know, dust and debris and such, and keeping it from falling on the table. All right, this will be the same way. I have to insert this one into the base here. And I'm careful that I don't drive these in too far now because I can't hit them from the other side. Now that the bottom's glued down, I can't pop them from the other side to get them out. So I just rest them in there until they're ready to go all the way in. I will trim these down and then they will get inserted. We might do that today. I might trim them. There's six long ones that have dividers that we need to get knocked down. This, like I said, this is a piece of hickory, so kind of different wood. I've never worked with the hickory before. I'll never work with the hickory again because it's kind of a pain in the butt. It's beautiful, in my opinion, very rustic looking, but really, really hard and really hard on tools. Let's just say I would probably, if I had a planer that had a helical cutting head in there, I would probably be more confident working with this stuff. But with a straight edge planer, it just, the wood grain in this stuff, some of it planed just fine, but some of it was just chattery and ugly, and it has to do with the wood grain and the hardness of this stuff. Super hard. Anyway, that is the last one that was in clamps. So these are all done now. Ooh, that stuff is heavy too, man. So let me throw these things out of the way. The long ones I always keep those over in a, oh, I switched my screen. I never know what I'm on now. There we go. I keep the long ones, the long pieces in my scrap bin because I use those for clamping calls a lot. And then I have all of these other pieces that I will keep because we are going to use those for doing corners and such. So I'm just going to stack them out of the way because we're going to have to start working on the corners of these things. One thing I need to do is need to do a little housekeeping in front of you. I apologize for that, but I need to make some room here on my bench, and I need all these clamps just get in the way. But I do have a clamp holder up here in the back, so I can put these up here and kind of keep them out of the way. And then they're around when I need them. So there we go. So there's the clamps up there behaving themselves in their little home when I need them. And I've got clamps laying everywhere. So I'm going to do a little cleaning of my workspace. Not too much, but just kind of get things prepped for the next steps. And see, I have more clamps here because I was doing lots of gluing. When I got to the point where I was like, you know, I probably have time to clamp all these without getting every clamp involved that I own. So I was just using the small clamps. But anyway, I had to put these back. I don't have a huge clamping rack, so some of the places I clamp on the edges of tables and stuff and try to keep all my stuff organized as best as I can. I need to also put away this router. So this router, for those of you who are wondering, this is a Bosch Colt router. I got this on eBay used, but it's really, really nice. If you don't have a small handheld router, well, first of all, if you don't have a router, this is the first router I would say that you should get. Not a big giant one. I would get a small router like this, one of the small handheld ones. This one is made by Bosch. It's probably one of the most popular out there, the little Colt. It fits perfectly in your hand. There's lots of accessories you can get for this thing. And it's great for doing lots of trim work and things like that. So this would be my recommendation for the first router bit that you should buy. I'm going to make sure this is unplugged before I just start putting my hands all over it. I think it is, yeah. It comes in this little case, and let me go this way. So the case has goodies in it. You know, there's an edge guide right here that you can attach to it. It has the wrenches. It's had a set of glasses in there, and it's just a nice thing to have. It uses a 1/4-inch bit, and I'm gonna unloosen the bit that's in here right now. So I need to get this locked, and let's see, I need to go this way. There we go. But this, if I was to give a recommendation for a small router, it would be one of these. And like I said, this Bosch Colt is probably one of the most popular ones out there that I've seen. Probably this one in DeWalt, theirs is also very popular. And it has a little, so I can unlock this, and then it has a little thumb screw here that I can raise and lower if I want to. I can just go to unlock and then quickly move it up and down. So you can move it up and down like this. Actually, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to vacuum this out. It got a little really dusty inside. I'm just going to get the dust out real quick, and then I'm going to put this away just to get it out of the way. But I just wanted to show it to you because I think that people kind of sometimes have a question about things like routers and stuff, and sometimes they buy one that's too big for what they need. And so the truth is, if most of the routing stuff that you're doing is edge routing, you probably do not need a very large router. Something that is more hand holdable and portable and allows you the flexibility of moving around. You can do a lot of stuff with this one little tool right here. With the myriad of router bits that are available out there, your potential for routing options is really, really, really high. So that's what I would suggest. And then, you know what, if you've got bigger projects and stuff, then kind of branch out into a larger router. I have some very large Porter cable routers. I have a very large, like 2.5 or 3 horsepower router in my router table here and such. But those are ones that, you know what, they have special purpose, but they're not as utilitarian as this little tiny one is. It just does so many things. So anyway, but I'm gonna put that in there like that. It all tucks in, and then this whole thing just closes up. Oh, let me put the wrench back in here. Everything has its own little place to fit into, which is kind of nice. You close it up, and there's the little router kit that you can just take with you and go. And this was not that expensive in the world of tools. Buying that little used, like I said, that was used, and buying that little used Bosch Colt router, not that expensive. In fact, I can, here, let's go look it up here. I don't want coupons, maybe later, thank you. B-O-S-C-H, Bosch Colt router. So I'm just on eBay because, you know, and then I'm going to sort this by, I'm going to filter it so that I'm just getting used ones. So there's 23 used ones right now. And actually, let's do it by, let's show sold items so we can see what the price has been for these things being sold. 73 bucks. Here's one that sold for 32 bucks. 99, but it was like brand new. Here's one for 30 bucks, 80 bucks. So kind of all over the place, but usually $70 looks to be the median price for these things. And that usually comes with the basic setup that I had. So for 70 bucks, you get a really nice, I mean, it's not super powerful. It's like 1 horsepower. It's not going to be crazy powerful, but honestly, here's that whole kit I just had, 35 bucks on eBay plus shipping. So they had, well, okay, so they had $35 in shipping. So you're going to still pay around 70. But if you think about it, $70, now I don't know what these go for brand new, but I'm sure it's much more than $70. Let's see what our friends on Amazon say. SCH Colt router. So yeah, it's like $85 for the 1 horsepower. There's the 1.25 horsepower variable speed for 125 bucks. And then you can get them with a, if you want to get the plunge router adapter to it, which I actually have that, that's like $185. So for all that cost, you could buy a new one, but honestly, I have no problem buying like a used router. If it says that it's in working condition, you know, if you buy it on eBay and it doesn't work, you can return it, and eBay takes care of people who buy stuff. So you will not get hosed on buying a router or something like that. And most people just want to move to a different model, and that's why they get rid of them. So you're not probably going to lose out. I mean, this one looks a little different than mine. It's the 1.25, so they've upped the speed or the power on them a little bit. But I think for that kit, sells for 140 bucks brand new. The plunge base for that router sells brand new for 87 bucks. So basically almost as much as the router is the plunge base for the thing. So yikes, that's a little expensive. I have a lot of attachments for mine. I have a deluxe edge guide, and I got a whole bunch of stuff because I'm using it for different things. But that's the nice part, is you can buy these accessories for it as you go. And each one of those things in turn allows you to kind of increase your capabilities, but you don't have to start with all those accessories, right? So this is one of my big Mamma Jamma routers right here. This is a Porter cable. This is the, what number is this? This is the model 6931. I don't even know how many horses this is. Does it say how many horses this is? I'm sure it says it on here somewhere. I don't know. But anyway, this has a plunge base on there. I use this particular one in my, I'm not sure why it's not going up and down. Oh, there it goes. So I've got stop set on here, but this has a plunge router base on here. I use this bit that's on here. Let me show you this bit. This is a big monster bit on here. I use this bit for flattening slabs. So you can see it's got 3 teeth on there, and it's a big monster. So this particular router I have set up for doing slab work. That's all I do with this. So if I'm flattening slabs, that's the one I use. And it has more horsepower to it. It's bigger and chunkier, and you know, obviously you're not going to use that little Colt router for doing slab work because it's just not the right match. But this, on the other hand, absolutely the right match. I also have a collet extender on here, which allows my bit to stick further away from the base here, because when you're doing slabs, you're running this through a guide, and so you have to have that bit sticking down even farther. The other thing is that this is using a 1/2-inch collet. You can use a 1/4-inch collet on here, and it comes with one, but when you're doing things like slab work, you really want that larger collet to hold a thicker shaft, which is more stable when you're cutting through large pieces of wood and such. But anyway, that's kind of router talk for this morning. I think I wouldn't start with this router, because if you want to do edge work with this, it's too big to do edge work. Like if you're doing things with like this little tiny, you know, this is a very small flush trim bit right here. If you're using this, you don't want a big giant router for this thing. It's just, it's overkill. Yeah, it's just too much. So that small one is perfect for doing routing work, edge routing and things like that. If you're cutting dados and stuff, you probably want something a little beefier. Things where you're removing a lot of wood with the router, you want something that is a heavier horsepower, just a little bit more bulk to it and a little bit more stable. But for all the delicate trim and edge work and stuff, man, you can't go wrong with a little small handheld router. In fact, it's really big is that they make battery powered ones. So you can buy whatever, like if you have a, like if you've got a Makita, right? Like I've got a Makita right here with my hand tools, and I've got the batteries and such. I could buy a Makita wireless, or not wireless, but, well, it is kind of wireless, but battery powered handheld router that would utilize the same batteries. And so it can be like expanding your system that you have. I don't have a battery powered one because I've got that, and honestly the cord to me never gets in the way, and I never have to worry about having a fresh battery or anything or running out of charge halfway through. So to me that's a little much. But a lot of people who just do a lot of edge trimming and things like that, like if they're just doing a lot of roundovers on stuff, and you know, it's something they can zip through really fast, then having the battery powered one is really nice. They just grab it, it's usually set up, they go, and they're done. So it just depends on your work and what you're doing. But I find the corded models to me to be the easiest to work with, because I just like the guaranteed power that's available and not have to guess whether my battery has enough charge or not. So anywho, let me put this away, and then we can kind of get on to doing stuff. But I have to put this over to the side here. So yeah, so I actually have, how many routers do I have? I think I have 3, maybe. 3 routers, 4 routers, maybe 3. I can't remember how many I have. I have the big one there, I have the Colt, I have the one on my table, and I think I have one other one hanging around here somewhere, another Porter cable somewhere. I might have sold it. Actually, I think I sold that Porter cable. I needed that one because it was beefier, and I wanted a bigger, beefier one. So I think I just have 3 right now. I lose track. But anyway, well, 1, 2, yeah, and then I have the one that actually is in my CNC machine. I actually purchased that with the CNC machine. It is a handheld router as well. It's a DeWalt, was that a 611? I think it's the model 611. Yeah, so DWP 611, which is basically a handheld router, and you can see it. It's just kind of sitting right there, right there. There it is. That is a handheld router. It's a DeWalt, and it actually came with all the little goodies and stuff with the base, and yeah, this is the base that came with that router. But in order to use it in the CNC machine, you take it out of there, and it fits into a special clamp on the CNC machine, and it gets used that way. So, so that's 3 that I have, and no, I'm sorry, 4. I forgot my Triton in the table here. So I have 4 routers right now, but they all have their special purpose, and so I don't, I don't usually cross over one to the other. If I'm doing portable little handheld work, I use the Colt. If I'm doing, bigger, removing large pieces of wood and such, I use the large Porter cable. If I'm doing CNC, I'm using the DeWalt. And if I'm doing stuff on the router table, like we're going to do probably a little bit later, then I will be using the Triton. So they all have their purpose, and it's nice to have the tool you need for the job. But the other thing is, a lot of these things, you can get by with using one tool for a lot of the different things. So like I said, it just depends on how it's set up and the accessories and things like that you've got. But enough of tool talk. We got things to do. So when we look at these bases that we've got, actually, hang on a second. Let me I'm just gonna put 2 things away here, because otherwise they're gonna get knocked off the table and broken or something else. So I'm putting this flush trim bit away because it's small. And then also I need to put this drill bit away, because if you knock the drill over, and you could snap the bit off in there, and that's sad. So let me I got this little kit of DeWalt drill bits, and I'm pretty happy with them. They're kind of nice. I got it at like Home Depot or whatever, but it's a nice little kit, and it keeps it all kind of together here. So I have lots of other drill bits, but this is the one I reach for most of the time. And then I just throw it back in the drawer over by my drill press, and it lives there. All right, so when we look at these bases, and they're all pretty much the same. When I constructed these, I'm going to go to this camera right here so we can talk about these edges. When we look at the edge, we can see that there's a little bit of overhang on each edge right here. There's a tiny bit of overhang. So when I cut the slot, the rabbet right here for this piece, I leave it a little deeper than it needs to be, because I want a little bit of overhang. And that allows me to flush this edge, this little bit right here. I can flush it up to this flat part. If I cut it too shallow, I would have to remove wood from this whole face to get it even here. So it's easier to remove a little bit of wood from here and get it flushed down to the face. And the way I do that is over here in the clamps, where I will grab I'm gonna grab a piece of wood here, where I will grab a hand clamp, or a hand clamp. I will grab a hand plane, and we will plane off these edges. Now, so I'll put this in here, tighten up my vise. I have another camera here that shows that. And now it's sitting in the vise here. Let me go a little lower here. There we go. Now, I do this a certain way. I could just go right across the whole surface, right, and just make everything flush to this face. Problem with that, though, is that this is end grain. And the end grain on this edge, as I'm running this way, this end grain all along this edge right here is unsupported. And what I mean by unsupported is that there's nothing backing it to keep it from chipping out and flying away. And we don't want that. Even though I'm going to be rounding off these corners, I don't want to start off with chip out, because you never know how big that chip out's going to be. It could tear off a big corner, and in your hose, it could just tear off a little piece. If there was a piece of wood behind it, it would be supporting those wood fibers, and it wouldn't be an issue. But because it's not, there's nothing behind this piece, it's just air, we want to make sure that whenever we're running a plane across the surface, it does not push across this way towards unsupported wood. Flat-faced wood isn't an issue. There's nothing to worry about support, but when you're talking in grain, you want that grain to be supported. So if I take the plane on this side though, and I'm pushing it over here, all of the wood grain on this edge is supported by this piece of wood. So I'm not going to have to worry about chip out over here. Now I do have some glue on those edges too. So I'm not going to just go at this with my nice plane. I'm going to first take my little, I've got my little block plane here, my little Stanley, and I'm just going to take this Stanley and just kind of get some of this glue off of here so that I'm just working with the wood. I'm only wanting to work with the wood, not the glue, because I try to keep this blade sharp and glue can dull it a little bit. But now what I do is just run this across that edge grain, that end grain like this, and bring it down to a flush surface. And you'll notice as I'm doing this, I'm not coming straight across it like this. I could, but it's kind of harder to do that way. I'm bringing it at an angle like this. So instead of being this way, I'm bringing it at an angle, and that angle allows me to kind of slice these end grain fibers a little bit more smooth. And I keep the toe of the sole on the edge of the wood here. That is my guide. So I'm bringing everything down to this level. So I want to make sure that my sole is in contact with that level. And I just work this back and forth across until I get this flushed up like that. And so this side is now flush. And then in order to make sure it looks good everywhere, just bring it back to this side and we will work on this edge. These are not sticking out that far, so it really doesn't take that long to do this. But it is the easiest way, in my opinion, to get this done. This is really hard wood though. Like I said, this stuff is very hard on tools. Now, as I start going across here, I'm going to start hitting the flat part. And that's how I know it's like, okay, well, that's good. Once I'm starting to remove wood from this flat surface, I'm going a little too far almost. So I will stop before I start planing off this edge piece. But if you use your finger on the edge, you can feel it. And you should not really feel any transition between those two pieces. Right there was a little bit. And then I'm just going to keep rotating the box around and always working towards that. Let's get this glue off of here. Always working towards that supported edge. But this was nice because I didn't have too much sticking out. I measured this pretty well. But I try to do this on every single one. So even though I'm going to be rounding these and doing a large round over on all these edges, I want to have a nice square surface all the way from this edge all the way to the flat face, because I'm using a bearing bit and such, and it needs to reference. And if this was too high, my radius would not be nice and even going across. So I need to start off with a nice flat surface here, and then I'll get a really nice round radius on the edge here. This one did not have as much glue squeeze out, so I'll just get right to it. But anyway, I do this on all of them. So that's what we're going to be doing for the next minute or two, is just kind of going at this with the plane. I wonder if my son's gone yet. He's not. All right, hang on. I'm going to take a break and make sure my son is moving. And I'm back. Sorry about that. My son was taking the dogs to work with him, so I helped him get the dogs ready to go. I put their harnesses on and stuff. All right, kids, what are you going to do, right? Looks pretty good. Still a little bit. There we go. It's nice. And this one, did we do this side already? I think I did. I'm going to hit this edge. Not happy with this edge right here. I'm going to hit it one more time here. There we go. That's better. Okay. I mean, that's basically the process here. And they all have to have this done. So I just keep rolling through. But they basically all have just a little bit of overhang here. And my planer, hand plane here is pretty sharp. So it does a pretty good job on the end grain. Sometimes you can get chatter. And the one way to combat that is to wax the bottom of your hand plane. Some people actually just keep a large candle. And then they just run the candle over the edge of the sole. They'll just take the candle and go boop, 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 and they'll run it across there, and that kind of waxes it up. I will use paste wax to do it, which is also totally fine and acceptable. And all you're doing is you're reducing the friction. I can also come at it from this way. But you're reducing the friction of the sole on the wood here and such, and it usually glides over much smoother. So that's not quite. Like I said, use your fingers. Your fingers are probably the best tool you have to check flushness. It's amazing how sensitive your fingers can be in determining stuff like that. I mean, that is, unless you've lost all sensitivity in your fingers, in which case I'm sorry, and that won't help you. But for most people, it will. Tell you what, it is a little warm in here. I'm going to turn a fan on just to kind of keep some air moving in here. It's supposed to be very warm today. Unfortunately, we're getting back up into the 90-degree territory again. I was kind of hoping we were past that, but apparently that's not the case. The 90s are going to make another, oh, don't want to do that, another appearance this week, which is not great because I'm trying to figure out when I'm going to take my long bicycle trip. I'm doing the Gap Trail, which runs from, ooh, there's a lot of overhang on this one. The Gap Trail runs from Pittsburgh to Cumberland, Maryland. And then from Cumberland, Maryland to Georgetown, which is in Washington, D.C., I will be using the C&O Canal Trail. They all kind of run together. About 350 miles altogether. And I'll be bike camping, bike packing, as it's popularly known. Basically just packing all my gear on here. So, difference between bicycle touring and bike packing is that bicycle touring, you've probably seen them, it's the ones they have the big panniers, whatever, like the luggage on the side of the wheels and stuff, like saddlebags. But they are typically, staying in hotels every night and such, and they're usually on the roads. Bike packing is more like backpacking, so not necessarily, you're on trails and you're typically, for the most part, camping, which is what I'll be doing. So every evening, it's more like a bike or more like a backpacking trip where you're going to a camping spot and pitching your tent and cooking your food and all that good stuff. So that's my plan. This trail is set up really well for that. This is really a very deep one here. But anyway, it's set up for this, and tons of people do it. I think there's like 1 million people a year do the Gap Trail. But I don't want to do it when it's super hot. Two things. I don't like summer camping because I don't like sleeping out in the hot. I'm kind of a warm sleeper, so I don't like sleeping in the heat. You can only take so many clothes off. I can always put more clothes on. So I kind of like it when it's a little cooler, at least for sleeping. And also just riding, it's much more pleasurable to ride when it's, in the 70s outside than it is when it's in the 80s and the 90s. That is not as pleasurable. So I'm waiting for the temps to cool down a little bit. And we had a nice cool stretch here last week, and I was hoping that was going to continue on. I mean, today is what, September 13th? So we're getting closer to fall, and that's my goal is to kind of hit this trail in the fall. I also would like it not to be raining on me. Coffee's done. I'd like it not to be raining on me while I'm doing this. I do have rain gear that I will be taking with me. I have rain covers for my bags, and I have rain wear for my body. But if you've ever done anything in the rain, it's not very pleasurable, right? And then things have to dry and stuff. So I'm hoping I can find a nice dry patch of weather to do this in. It's going to be, the problem with that is it's going to take me quite a few days to do this. Some people do it in as few as like 4 days or whatever, but they're riding some epic miles. And I will tell you that I am not an epic mile person. So I'm looking to do, on average, 40 miles a day, give or take. My target is about 8 to 9 days, depending. I might do them shorter, I might do it longer, but that's my target anyway. And the nice part is that there's campsites all along the way. So, I mean, if you get to a spot and you're just like, I am bushed and I don't want to go any further, just pitch your camp and pick up the next day. If, on the other hand, you're like feeling like I got a lot more miles left in me, you just keep riding, and pretty much about every 5 miles, you will find a place to camp, like designated hiker-biker camp spots. So that's really nice because it gives you a lot of latitude in how many miles you put in. So I think the way I have it planned out, I've got a couple of like 50-mile days, but the thing's 350 miles. So like if I was just doing 35 miles a day, well, that's 10 days to do the whole thing, right? So I'm gonna have to put in some longer miles to cut that time frame down. The nice thing is you can divide it up because you're basically just gonna be riding all day long. So you can do it in chunks and do like 5 miles and take a short water break, right? And then do another 5 miles and take another water break. And do that a couple times until it's lunchtime, then take a lunch break. And then, so you can easily split the day up so that 40 miles doesn't feel like it's that epic. I mean, if you're just doing it like 5 miles at a time, not that big a deal. That's what I'm telling myself. We will we will come to see if that plays out. But I've talked to some people who've done it, and they're like, oh my God, it's so wonderful. Now, not everybody does the whole trail. A lot of people have done the Gap Trail. A lot of people do the C&O Canal Trail. This one needs a touch more. There's not a lot of people that do the whole thing, but I was like, you know, I really want to do the whole thing. So that's my plan, to do the whole thing. So I've been planning this for a while. I go out and do my bike rides and been getting my miles in, kind of getting my butt muscle tuned up, because, you know, sitting on that for a long time, I think that's one of the biggest things, is not really being accustomed to being in the saddle, which is what they call the bike seat. So being in the saddle for that many hours is something that I'm not used to. I think after a couple of days I'll be used to it, but I've been trying to build miles. It's like anything else where you just have to build your tolerance. So I was actually just watching a YouTube video. There's a couple, Kara and Nate, K and N, yeah, Kara and Nate, who basically all they do is travel around the country and the world doing different things and whatever. And they just did there's a bike ride across the state of Iowa, and like thousands upon thousands of people do this. It's called Ragbrai, and it's really, really cool, because you have camps, you have all your camping stuff and everything else, but in the morning you take your gear and you put it in a bag and you throw it on a truck, and they take that stuff to the next town where you're going to set up for the end of the day, and then you just do your riding. So you just take what you need, your bike and your water bottles and such, and then like every single town along the way is set up as a rest stop, party, hospitality, just all kinds of stuff. And it's like 450 miles. You bike across the entire state of Iowa, but I think they did it, it's set up to do it in 7 days. So there's some epically long days in there. I think there's a couple of days when they did like 85 miles, and they did it on a tandem bike. So I think that has pluses and minuses. If it's a good tandem, well, that really helps to share the load. But on the other end, you've got more weight. I got to put some wax on here because it is squeaking, and the wax really helps with the squeak. So hang on a second, let me get the wax over here. But anyway, so Nate and Kara and Nate, I can't remember how they listed on their YouTube page, but anyway, the ride, it's an annual ride, and it's called Ragbrai, across the state of Iowa, and it looks really cool. And it's kind of like a carnival on wheels, but I mean, honestly, thousands of people, and they close the roads, so there's no vehicular traffic along this entire route. I mean, I guess each day, whatever part of the route is closed off to traffic. The only traffic on there are people or cars or farm vehicles that actually belong there. Like if somebody needs to go to their residence or whatever. But for the most part, it's just wide open roads and riding, and no cars or anything. So that's kind of cool. But anyway, I watched their video. It's actually a 2-part video on their channel, and really good. I really enjoyed it, watching it. And it's stuff like that I really kind of find interesting, because it's personal challenges. And a lot of times people get into those things and they have no idea, like they've never ridden more than like 5 miles on a bike. And all of a sudden they find themselves on a bike journey going across the state and of Iowa and stuff. And it's just like, it's so cool. And I love things like that where, you know, you definitely, I mean, there's people who definitely train for stuff like this and they ride epic miles every day, and something like that would not be a big deal. But It's not just the riding, it's a community thing. I'm going to wax the side of this too, just while I've got it here, because you're with all these people and you're in these communities and everything else. So it's kind of really cool. But I love stuff like that where, you know, people are personally pushing their unknown boundaries or unknown limits. When I went to the Himalayas a couple of years ago, yes, I actually hiked in the Himalayas. And I had done some training and hiking around the areas and stuff like that, but I live on the East Coast where we don't really have any altitude. So it's hard to get acclimated to hiking in high altitudes. Like if I lived in Colorado, it'd be different, but I don't. So most of my stuff is near sea level. And here I was going to be hiking at, you know, 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 feet. And there's no way to train for that. You just kind of, I basically said, well, it is what it is. And I bought my plane tickets and off I went and I did it. And, you know, the feeling of accomplishment for doing something like that is so high, because even though it was really hard at times, and I kind of changed my schedule and my route and stuff, and I hiked in the Annapurna mountain range. So not Everest, kind of further down the Himalayan range from where Everest is, but still among 7 of the highest mountains in the world and things like that. There's this, it's the biggest, or like the highest and most popular hiking trail in the world. It's epic. Anyway, but sometimes you just gotta push outside the personal comfort boundaries and do things like that. You know, I'm in a different part of the world. I'm doing physical things that I had no idea if I would actually be able to do. I was, for the most part, traveling by myself. I didn't have anybody else traveling with me. I did have a porter helping me carry some of my bags, because that's a whole different story. But anyway, but I love stuff like that because it's you're outside your comfort zone, and being outside your comfort zone is a good thing, in my opinion. It allows you to kind of expand on a personal level, much like when I was doing that stuff this weekend with working with the laminate and stuff. I'd never done that before. It was kind of out of my comfort zone. But in the end, I think I benefited from that process. I've got a new skill set now. I would feel much more comfortable doing any laminate work if I needed to in the future, or doing veneer work. I would not be hesitant about doing that. I could say, yeah, absolutely, I can do that. Going on a big hike, it would still be a lot of training and challenge, but I look at something like, well, not epic long adventures. Like, I'm not going to go run out and do the Appalachian Trail right now, but there are people who do that, who look at it and go, they had no training or whatever, and they're like, you know what, I'm going to go do it. Now, do they make it from Georgia to Mount Katahdin up in Maine? No, probably not. Very few people do. I think 10% of the people who set out to do the Appalachian Trail do the whole thing, but it doesn't mean you couldn't do section hikes of it and do part of it and get personal growth from doing that stuff. So to me, that's what I like, is the personal growth and the just, you're not always going to do it. You're not always going to make the challenge and succeed. But the attempt and the experiences that you get from it, to me, are so beneficial. So I was watching another video this weekend. Yes, I probably watched too much YouTube. But anyway, a guy named Ryan Van Duzer, I watch his channel, and he's all about doing epic adventures and stuff. And he's biked the Colorado Trail and done all these crazy things. He's one of the people who actually, I watched a ton of his videos of his hikes in Nepal, which not only gave me information, but also inspiration. So thank you to Ryan Van Duzer. But anyway, he had a video where he was following along with a friend of his who was trying to set the FTK for the Appalachian Trail. FTK is fastest known time, or FKT, that's what it is, sorry, FKT, fastest known time. And if you don't know, typically the Appalachian Trail takes most people who do finish it, it takes them a number of months, by like usually like 4 to 5 months. It's 2,300 miles or something along that line. It's huge, right? So if you're hiking it, it could take you some epic days to get that far. This guy, he had the fastest known time at one point in time in his life of 40 some odd days, and then someone beat him, so he was trying to go back and beat his time, and he was doing that. Now, to me, that's crazy. He's putting in 50 miles a day, going from like sun up to sundown, and but it's all about, you know, pushing those personal limits and things like that. So it was really interesting. He did not make it. He actually got an injury and had to stop. Anyway, stuff like that I just find fascinating, where, you know, there's not really a risk of to your life, like these people who go out and climb Mount Everest and stuff like that. I'm like, no, thank you, because anything that I do like that, where there's a high probability of me dying, not really in my list of things that I want to accomplish. But that's not everybody. Obviously, you look at people who want to climb Mount Everest, and it's hundreds of them every year that do. So obviously that's in other people's bucket lists of personal things. But to me, things like, you know, jumping out of airplanes and, you know, stuff like that, I'm just like, yeah, not so much. But things where I have to push myself a little bit personally, either physically or emotionally, like traveling on my own. I really enjoy traveling on my own to like foreign countries. I enjoy it a lot because it's outside of my comfort zone. I'm in a place where I probably don't speak the language, and there's different cultural things and food things and people and so much stuff and a lot of unknowns, and I love being out of my comfort zone and things like that. That's one of the reasons why I love to travel, and I like traveling outside of my own country. Traveling in your own country is very comfortable for most people, I find. But you get outside your country, and now there's a, you know, like not going to, like, you know, if I was traveling to Canada, it'd still be in my comfort zone, I think. That wouldn't be as uncomfortable. But going to some place like, you know, maybe even like Ireland or something like that. Yeah, I sort of speak the language. I've been accused of not being able to speak English, so. But you know, it's all the new not knowing and the experiences and everything else. I just find that to be just really one of life's best experiences. So, yeah, here's what it is. Now, getting back to the wood here, I'm probably, what time is it here? It's 12:30. So I'm not going to do all of these right now in front of you because I don't want to bore you to death. I'm going to get 4 of these done. Let's take the centerpiece out here. We will probably not get to the centerpieces today, these dividers, but we can get to the roundovers. So what I will do is maybe finish this one, and then we can move on to doing roundovers on these corners. We'll go over to the, I just whistled while I said something. That was really weird. I will go over to the router table and set that up to do a roundover on these. And we'll do a sampling of roundovers so you can see that process as well. And then I'll finish the rest of them off camera because, as you can see, this isn't like a super hard thing to do, but it does take time. Now, I'm doing cherry right now, and cherry is super easy because it cuts really well. So it doesn't take me long to get the cherry ones. You can see I'm getting some larger shavings here, so almost down to flush here. But yeah, the cherry much easier to cut than like working with the hickory and the walnut and stuff. Unfortunately, I have the most hickory bases. I think I have 3 hickory bases. So they just take a little bit. I have 3 hickory and a walnut. I also have 2 oak, and I think I only have 1 cherry. So unfortunately, I only have one of the easiest of woods to do, which is this one. But we're going to get this nice and square and flat. And then we will do a round over so that you can see how fast that went. This also just I was really pretty precise with this, particular set of joints. So just a bare minimum of overhang here, which means that the cleanup is really fast. This being the cleanup. So that one's already flush. One more to do on this one. All right. Dump some of the shavings. And this one, just a little bit. There we go. So this one was really fast, super fast. In fact, I'm getting very wide shavings here, which means I'm actually shaving the top here a little bit too. So I've got to be careful. I don't want to go too far in that direction. But I have 4 of them done. And so I think, at least for the time being, we can go ahead and set up to do the corners. So what I'm going to do is move these bases over to the other side of the table saw. Oh, hickory's so heavy. And that gives me some work surface here. So you can see I've got a camera set up over here. I'll be doing all the work over here, but I need to move all this stuff out the way. So let's get this stuff moving. And I'm not sure why I have a plastic bag here. Stuff that over here for a moment. I'm putting things away. Let me show you. So this is the contact cement I've never used this before, but this is the contact cement that I used. So this is a 3M Fast Bond contact adhesive, 30NF neutral. It's water-based, which was nice because I used a brush to put this stuff on, and then you can actually clean the brush up with the water and soap, and which means that in between the different things, the brush didn't get hard and sticky. It stayed loose and pliable, so I could keep using the same brush as I tackled each side of the box top thing. But it's kind of milky. It pours out, looks kind of like milk. Like when you pour it out, it was much thinner than I anticipated. I watched some other videos with like some DAP contact cement, which looked much thicker. And this stuff was much thinner than I anticipated it being. Let me put this stuff away too. So it was kind of thin and milky, but it went on really easy with the brush. I just brushed it on until I had an even coat on the entire surface, and then you let it sit until it feels dry to the touch, or it doesn't come off on your finger. You don't want it to come off on your fingers. And then you're able to put the 2 pieces together and roll them with the J-roller, and poof, it's pretty cool. I'm happy I did that project, even though it gave me stress. I'm very happy I did that because I found that it's actually much easier than I had anticipated in terms of the actual application of the Formica. Getting them sized and fit on that particular piece, that was as hard as I figured it would be. But I know now that if I want to cover something in a laminate or Formica or something like that, or a veneer, that I think that process is pretty cool and not as intimidating as it once was. So very cool. And I've got that sealant stuff, so I'll just keep that. And, you know, I'll actually look into getting some laminate veneer stuff. All right, I need to find my bit that I use the roundovers on here. Now, these are fairly large roundovers. So I have a very large bit that I use for this. So if you look, this is a very large bit, and it has a very large 1/2-inch shaft on here because, like I said, if I'm removing a lot of wood, I like to have that thicker 1/2-inch shaft because to me it reduces vibrations in the bit itself and increases support for the cut. So I'm going to take this 1/4-inch collet off, put in the 1/2-inch collet like this. So if you're buying a large router, make sure it has a 1/4 and a 1/2-inch collet. If it doesn't, find one that does, because I'm guaranteeing you, you're going to, at some point in time, even if you've got a whole drawer full of 1/4-inch bits, at some point in time, you're going to want a larger bit. It's just the way it works. You're going to want a larger shaft. So make sure that at least if you get a router, that it has a 1/2-inch collet that comes with it, or at least is available to purchase separately. Most of them come with them. Most of the larger ones come with it though. So I'd say add that to your shopping list of things that you should get. Now, you know what? Let me crank down on this because ever since that bit rose on me as I was doing stuff, it made me kind of nervous. All right. There we go. We're gonna lower this back down, and I got to get a collar to go around there. So let's find one that is the appropriate size. I think this one is too small. It is. So one size up from this one. I should have known that, but anyway. So here's the appropriate collar. Put that on here. This is 2 1/8 inch. And it basically just provides surface area to get close to the bit, but while still allowing the bit to spin freely within that area. So that's all the collar is doing. All right, so I got that. Let me put this one away. And then we need to set up the depth of cut here. And we can do that with just a block of wood like this. You want one that is squared on the edge, so it has a nice square flat surface, because you're going to push it into the bit. So you can see it's actually pushing into the edge of that blade. And I want to lower this down to the edge of that blade just slides under that wood without any friction. So I'm just going to keep lowering this until that blade, now you can see the blade just, it slides right up the side there. If you don't want to go too low, because then you're not going to get a nice rounded profile, but you don't want to go too high, because otherwise the front edge of this will create a notch in here. So you want to just get it so that just slides under. So if I come up, you'll see it taps it, it hits it. So I lower this until it just, there we go. So it just slides underneath. And then we will take our passes through here and shave this off until, not this one, but on the edge, until it's rounded. Now, to do that, a couple things. One, I'll get the thing over here. One is we will need to get some support for those corners. So I'm going to enlist the help of these little blocks of wood that I've been saving over here. So the support on the corners, just like when I'm using the hand plane here and I'm pushing across those end fibers, well, you know, if there's nothing supporting, the fibers on the end here are going to chip out, right? On this edge, if I'm coming this way, it's going to chip out. Well, same thing goes if I'm doing this, right? And if I'm running this across my router bit, everything on this corner right here is unsupported. There's no wood here to hold these fibers in place as they get cut by the router bit. So the router bit is free to just push those out, and then you'll have big chip outs and pieces flying off. So to combat that, I just use a piece of wood. Take a block of wood, stick it there, clamp it down on the edge, and now what I'm doing is I'm giving myself a lot of support on this edge, so that when it cuts through here, any tear out comes on this piece of wood on the outside, which is just a block, right? But all of the wood fibers in here are cleanly cut because they are supported by this block of wood. That is the way I do this. Now, the nice thing about these little blocks, and these are just cutoffs, and like I said, this is why I keep all these little cutoffs, because they allow you, this one's not great, it's kind of rough cut right here. In fact, hang on just a second. I'm going to quickly cut that edge off on my saw over here. You're not even going to see it. It's going to be so quick, you're not even going to see it. I'm just going to clean this edge up because I need a nice flat square edge when I run this thing through. There we go. Because I need this, if that had a rough cut on this edge right here, it wouldn't sit flat on the table, it might rock or whatever. And I want that to be perfectly lined up and square with that edge. All right, I'm gonna plug in my router. My dust collection isn't really useful in this instance. I usually just kind of have it sitting up here on the table, kind of like hanging out right here. So it catches some of the dust and debris that comes off of here, but it's not super efficient, but that's okay. The other thing I need is a clamp to do this with. So for each of these blocks of wood, I get 4 corners. It has 4 corners, so I can do all 4 edges of this box. I just keep rotating this piece of wood and putting a new fresh piece that hasn't been cut yet, so that every time I come to a new corner, I've got a fresh corner to put against the workpiece and give support. All right, I don't need the thing there, but I do need a clamp. So let me find a clamp, smaller clamp. I just use one of these quick grip type things right here. So I use one of these. I'm going to take this piece of wood and now I'm going to put it tall. And I hold it here until it lines up flush with the front. And then I'm going to just clamp it in place just like that. And I just need to hold it in place as I run it across the surface here. That's all I'm doing. Let me move these blocks of wood out of the way. I will be using them, but not at the moment. Yeah, so I've got the router bit plugged in. I probably need to lower the speed on there. The larger the bit, the slower the speed that you want your router bit turning is the general rule. At least that's what I've always been told. And I kind of just always follow that wisdom. And it kind of minimizes burning and things like that. So let's go ahead. I'm going to put my ears on here and turn on the fan and the router, adjust the speed, and then we'll do the first corner here. Okay, so just like any routing operation that I do where I'm removing a lot of wood, I usually do it in multiple passes. I don't try to eat up all the wood off of here in one pass because honestly, that's a recipe for disaster. A couple different things. One, when you're pushing this in, that bit is spinning counterclockwise. It's spinning in this direction. As I'm pushing my piece into this wood that's spinning towards it, it wants to kick it and throw it out of my hand, right? It just wants to grab it and throw it. That's what it does. So you have to be very careful when you're pushing through. I keep pressure on here and hold it to a point where I can ease it into the wood and then get the cut going. Once you got the cut moving, it's easy, but when you first push it into that piece of wood, it wants to catch that edge and throw it. So you have to be really careful. So I never go in too deep. That's rule number one. I always make a couple of passes. And then the other thing is, like I said, I'm working to remove a lot of wood and I just want to give the bit its best chance of success. So I just kind of keep pushing it till I get right up onto that bearing on this piece of wood here, push it through. And you can see this is why we clean that edge off, because that bearing, I don't want that interfering with any overhanging wood. That's why I flush this up. But we just run it through like that, and then we get these really nice rounded corners. So you can see all these corners now have rounded profiles on them. You can see I get a little burning in here. That'll all clean up with the sander. So a little bit of burning, not too bad. I kind of expected it with this wood. Sometimes the harder the wood, the more burning you'll get. But anyway, that's the process. And if you look at, little bug flying. If you look at the piece of wood that we used, you can see, look at the burning on these things, but you can see how it kind of just, every corner is rounded, but then it stops. And this is all the wood here that was used to support those cuts. And I wouldn't do it without that piece of wood. It would just be too dangerous and too detrimental to my project, because like I said, I think at that point in time it would chip out and then I'd be crying because I'd be trying to find the piece that chipped out to glue back in. Let me find another block here to use. A decent sized one right here. And once again, I'm just, there's a little teeny moth, little baby Mothra getting in my face here. But I'm just clamping this in so that it lines up with the edge. And it sits above that blade. So it's not, the clamp is in no way in danger of hitting that clamp. But I want to make sure that it's clamped on there tight and providing, you can see it's providing that support for this edge right here. All right, this is the walnut. We're going to go ahead and do this one. I'm just going to, like I said, same as last time, just do all four sides and then we'll come back and take a look at this one. All right, that one was pretty smooth. Nice corners on here, you can see. Nice rounded profiles on those corners. And these will all get smoothed out on the edges here. So I will sand all of these edges to make them nice and smooth, but the radius is there to work with now. So that's what I really need, is that radius. And this looks really nice. So let me get the next one over here. Going to be doing we're doing a hickory. So we'll see how this is. These hickories really are just a bear. I keep saying that. I don't want to dissuade anybody from using hickory, but maybe you shouldn't. Let me actually, you know what? I got a nice tall hickory piece right here. Oh, this one has another rough corner. Hang on, I got to go cut this corner off here because, like I said, the big thing is I want these edges to be nice and sharp. So I'm going to go over to my chop saw really quick, chop this off, and then we will be right back. Let's just take a second. Wow, it's funny because I make that cut, I hear my saw struggling against that that hickory, which I probably need a new blade for that saw anyway, but still just kind of amazing. I've used some hard woods. This is definitely on the hardest that I think I've ever done. I mean, I've used Babinga and some other stuff that I thought was pretty hard, but this stuff, I tell you. All right, let's get this sucker good. I used to do these like tall wise, like this on end. I was like, why am I doing that? I do them with the long side down, and it's so much easier. It's easier to control. So I'm not sure why I used to do it the other way. It's just sometimes you just do things and you get into a habit of it. But I now make sure that I have the flat long side down on the table, and it just provides a little bit more stability to the whole process. So. All right, I think we're good. I'm plugged in. Let's go ahead and get this one done. Overall, I'm actually pretty pleased with the hickory. It actually took to the rounding over much better than I had anticipated. So you can see that the burning that I get is usually where I enter. It's like where I'm entering the cut is where, as I push in, I'm slower. And so that wherever I'm slow is where that blade has time to sit there for a little bit longer, and that's where the burning occurs. So wherever on this edge that I entered into the cut is usually where you're going to see a little bit of a burn. Like right here, you'll see a little bit of a burn right there. That's usually because I sat here on this edge, and it's, as I'm entering in, I'm a little bit slow going in, and it allows that bit to sit in one place a little long, and that's what gives you the burn. But overall, I'm not unhappy with that. That looks really good, right? Nice round corners. So that's pretty good. I've got one more to do that is ready and prepped. I'm going to walk over here for a second, and I'm just going to widen this shot just a little. That's tight. There we go. I'm just widening that shot just a little bit for you. So one more to do here. This is the cherry that we did. Now cherry is the king of chip outs. Cherry, as nice as it is, and as much as I love working with cherry does have a habit of getting some chip out. So I want to be careful with this and make sure I take my time and do a good job with it. So let me get my pieces set up here and clamped in really well. Okay. All right, here we go. Okay, so let me move all these bases out of the way here. So I've got them kind of stacked up over here, and I'm gonna need my space. But I want to show you something before I move on or do anything else. So this backer board that I used just now for the cherry, I went ahead and pushed the cut across the end face of the backer board, and I'm going to show you over here. So if you look at the splinters and such coming off, as that bit pushed through the edge of this board, you see the big pieces of wood that's flying off of there? I don't know if you can see that or not. But big splinters of wood coming off of here. And that is because this edge was not supported. Now, this is the support piece, so I don't really care. That's why it's there. But this is what would happen to your work piece if you didn't support that cut, is you would get big split like this coming off of there. So that's why That's why it's really important to make sure that when you are doing any sort of routing where you're going to be coming to the edge with end grain on it, that you want to make sure that that end grain is supported so that you're not chipping those pieces out and losing big pieces of your workpiece that you'll either have to find and glue back into place or try to recreate and put a new piece. I've had that too, where I couldn't find the piece that chipped out and I had to like hand cut down a piece to fit into the missing slot, and it's just a nightmare. So bottom line, support your wood and you won't have to worry about that. I still make mistakes every now and then and go and plane across a piece of unsupported wood or something like that, but this is why you cannot plane or you can't run a end grain cutting board through a planer, because you've basically got all of these fibers sticking up and you've got those blades coming across there, and all they want to do is catch those pieces of fiber and throw them and tear them. And you can stick an end grain cutting board into a planer and shoot it across the room if it catches. I have seen people who have done end grain cutting boards through a planer, but they usually have boards on the side like this where they've got supports on each side where it's long grain running through. But even the chance of catching any of that end grain on one of those flat blades, and you are risking shooting that thing across the room. Same thing here. Anything on that router bit that's coming across that end grain is in danger of chipping out, and if it's unsupported. So I say it a lot, but I think it bears repeating multiple times, is that you should always have a support piece whenever you're routing an end grain type thing. Even when you're doing an edge, like a lot of times if you're doing a round over on a, like let's call it like this, right? Where it's just a rectangular or square piece of wood. Well, the thing that you're running the danger of is these long bits of grain right here. They're just long strips, right? As long as you're running along the length of them, you're fine. You're not in any danger really of chipping out. But as soon as you come to the other edge where now you're going across the face of that end grain, that's where when you get to the edge, you run that risk. So when you're doing a round over on something like this, it's always a good idea to round over the end grain first and then do the long grain, because the long grain, any chip out will be cleaned up by the long grain route. So do this edge and then route it this way. And then you're gonna come into this profile, and any chip out you get here will be cleaned up by going this way. That's general rule of thumb for doing roundovers on a on any sort of like flat wood surface or whatever. Anything going on here? I've seen some stuff, but I don't know. So yeah. Okay. Tropical storm Nicholas is dumping rain on Texas and Louisiana. Poor Louisiana. Texas, yeah, you'll get over it. But Louisiana, those poor folks down there. Those poor folks, they've had about enough of the rain, don't you think? All right, what do we got here? It is 1 o'clock. I could do a couple more here, I guess. I mean, I've got more to do. I don't really have a lot more to show you that's different. I'm going to keep doing the same thing. So I guess, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and grab a couple of bases and clean up the edges. And I'm just going to keep doing this for about the next 30 minutes or so. And because we're at 2 hours right now, I think that's my 2 hour time slot. I usually go to 1:30 because then it's lunchtime for me, which is what I always like. But let me see how bad this is right here. This is one of my white oak ones. This is one of the ones I screwed up the bottom on, where I routed too deep. My router bit slipped when I was doing the rabbet. The bit actually slipped up on the table and went deeper than I wanted. So this edge is kind of deep here, but I still have a lot of depth in here, and I think it's more than ample depth for the sewing machine. Well, you know, I could actually test that now that I actually have a now that I have the bottom glued in. I could actually grab my test machine here and just rest it inside and see how much space why is this thing so huge? Okay. Um, um, I have a problem. I have a huge problem. I have no idea what hell happened here. Why the hell is this measurement so far off? Why is this 8 1/8? What the hell did I do? Are you kidding me? Oh my God. Oh my loving God. You're going to see me melt down on camera now. You're literally going to see me melt down on camera now. I made every single one of these wrong. Every single one of these is wrong. How in the hell did I do that? How is that possible? How is this possible that I did this? And you're like, what did you do, Jeff? I don't know. My end pieces, I don't know. I cut them at 8 1/8, but you know what I did? I messed it up and I went 8 5/8. So every one of these, every stinking one of these, with the exception of maybe this, no, 8, all of them. Every single one of these, holy crap. Wow. Every single one of these is too large. Every one. Every single piece is too large. Somehow I got the end measurement as 8 5/8 for the end piece, the pieces on the end, and it's supposed to be 8 1/8, which means that it's an half an inch too wide on every single one. And I don't know that I can salvage this. All that work, and there's no way for me to save this. There's no way for me to save it. If I had caught it before I put the bottoms in, I'd say maybe I could do something, but there's really not. There's no way for me to save these. I'm at a loss for what to do now. The only thing I can think of, oh, and I've got all this damn different types of wood too. Jeez almighty. Because they won't fit the machines. The machines are too small to fit in this space. I can't believe I did this. I cannot believe I freaking did this. I'm just at a loss right now. I don't know what to do. All right, I'm not going to continue doing the work that I was doing at the moment until I can think of either a solution for this royal screw up that I just did, or B, have a bonfire and have to start over again. I've got this piece that I made for my buddy's mom, and it's just like, And the thing is, I'm pretty sure lengthwise I'm fine. Yep, nope, Yep, lengthwise I'm fine. I've got just the right amount of space, but I've got way too much space on either side here. Way too much space on either side. It's like a half an inch, way too big on the side. I know you can't see this. I don't know how to show this to you. Maybe this camera, I can bring this over and show you. I cannot believe this. So here's the machine sitting in here, and you notice that there's I mean, typically I will have like 1/8 of an inch gap on each side, which is fine. And it doesn't sit all the way in. It sits so it's about flush with this. But look at the space. Look at this. This is every single one of my machines, or one of my bases. Every single one I did this to. I cut every single one of those wrong. I don't know how I got 8 5/8. I don't have anything that's 8 5/8, and yet I did everything 8 5/8. And unless I can come up with a solution for how I'm going to account for that half an inch, I'm kind of at a loss here, because it's not just coming up with a solution for the half inch. It's like, well, just put a 1/4 inch strip on each side. Okay, that's fine, except I don't have the species of wood that matches every single one of these that I can run a 1/4 inch strip down the side. And that's part of the problem. Because I would need hickory that goes a 1/4 of an inch down the side. I would need oak a 1/4 of an inch down the side. I would need walnut a 1/4 of an inch down the side that is also not too big or too small for any of these. So, oh, wow. I cannot believe I just screwed this up the way I did. That just blows my mind. What the hell's going on here? Additional permissions needed. Really? Are you stinking kidding? Get off of here. Anyway, all right, I've got to go think this through. I might have to go to the lumber store and buy specific species of wood that I can use to fix these with. So the deal is that the compartment here is no big deal. I don't care about the compartment. I've got this isn't size specific. I'll just cut this out and put a lid on it. It's this part right here. And all I can do is put a piece of wood in the side like this that would maybe run along the length to support everything, that would have to be like a 1/2 inch thick, running down each side that the base would sit on. And maybe I could do that, but then it's just, oh, this is going to take some time for me to think through. I might have to change the way that I do these things to fix this, and I will definitely need more wood to fix these. Because I'm looking at my wood pile and I'm thinking the only thing I've got over there is cherry, and I don't have any pieces of wood that would actually and not look stupid. Here's the other thing. Yeah, I could make something to fit in there, but I don't want it to look stupid. I want it to look like it's, if I have a fix, it has to look like it's part of the actual design. That's the issue. It needs to be part of the design that is there to serve a function, not just be a fix for my screw up. And that's what makes it a little bit tougher. So, all right. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to leave it today in this very sad, horrible Monday morning start. And I don't know. I will brainstorm on this as best I can and try to come up with a solution, and maybe something that I can do with my CNC machine where I can do some rounded corners to match the profile of the machine so it looks like it cradles the machine in there better. I don't know. I just don't know at this point, but this is painful. This hurts. I mean, you're looking at, well, minus the oak or the walnut one, which was for a friend, that's $700 on the wood scrap right there. Unless I come up with a way to fix it. And right now I really don't have a solution to fix this. So I'm going to think on it for a little bit. Hopefully come up with a solution. When you see me on Wednesday, I'll either have a fresh stack of lumber or a way to fix this. I'm hoping I'll have a way to fix it, not a fresh stack of lumber. Oh, well, I'm going to spend the rest of the day kicking myself and trying to think this through. You hopefully will have a better Monday than I have just had. And come back on Wednesday and see what I came up with to fix this royal dumpster fire that I have created. All right, everybody, I'm out. I can't do anymore. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Have a great rest of your day. Have a good Tuesday. Come back on Wednesday and we'll figure out what I figured out. All right? Take care of yourselves. See you soon.